Good evening. Good evening. Rashard Tortorella with the Patriot Sentinel. This is one of our episodes that we do on Fridays called The Unplugged. And it was an impromptu podcast that started the conversation with me and Jed Green of ORCA about Senate Bill 1027. And I'd like to introduce our guest, Wendy Dow of Restore Liberty. You guys know who she is. She's on this podcast quite frequently. And, we have been crisscrossing all over Oklahoma discussing open primaries and election integrity. We have Dave Moore, an old friend of mine, and we were discussing this before the show that we haven't done a Facebook Live since almost 2 years ago, the last time at the Animal House. Right, Dave?
Exactly.
Out of Africa. And then we have my good friend Jed Green. He is the president of the Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis. And he called me this afternoon. And for those that aren't familiar with Senate Bill 1027, the conversation started with Wendy Dial about 3.5 months ago. And I didn't listen to her. I just brushed her off. It sounds like a good bill, and we want people to go out. So this bill governs how initiative petitions and the signature gathering process works. And so at the time, it sounded like it was a good bill. But as I was having conversations with Wendy on our road trips, Dave Moore, who's a volunteer, he's an activist in the Pike Off group, Pike Off OTA, and Jed Green, who's also an activist, and he has an initiative petition that he's running soon. And Jed, I want to start with you. So start off by explaining what 1027 is in its current form. In that conversation, you called me this afternoon to tell you that, to inform me that it's gone a totally different way, and it's going to screw all the grassroots who want to use the right to petition, but this is going to hurt us and make it fair for out-of-state petitions. So can you explain that?
Sure. My background in this is working with State Question 788, which was an statutory initiative petition. And then a couple of years ago, our organization actually led the efforts to defeat State Question 820, which, while it seems it would have appeared to have appealed to us, it was a out-of-state effort. And so, we fought that back from the grassroots level. Ultimately, what we've got here with Senate Bill 1027 is it throws a list of new restrictions into the initiative petition process as they relate to gathering signatures. There is a long list of things that are done in the process. The biggest concern is that the way it is written, it would eliminate the voting rights of folks all across Oklahoma. The way it would do that is simply signing an initiative petition can only be done by a registered voter. And so that is a privilege of being a registered voter. Therefore, this is a voting right. And what the bill does to limit those rights is simply in the current version to say that only a certain percentage of people, based on the number of people who voted in the last general election, would be allowed to sign this petition. The original Senate version, for example, would have allowed up to 3,600 signatures to be gathered out of, for example, Cimarron County. The current House version would now only allow for roughly 170 signatures to be gathered out of that county. And it, unlike the Senate version, it actually expands the number somewhat in Oklahoma and Tulsa County. So the fundamental problem here is, one person, one vote. If you're registered to vote, then you have a vote. And it's of the list of places where this is constitutionally questionable. If not, these types of measures have already been tested around the country in the courts and have failed spectacularly on a number of these things. The most troubling thing is that this is being sold as something to protect rural Oklahoma from out-of-state influence, but in fact, it limits their ability, and it creates such an almost a nearly impossible task that will definitely impede efforts of grassroots Oklahomans like ourselves. Things we win these and we defeat these on grassroots strength in Oklahoma. It would prohibit us from. It turns this into a minimum $5 to $6 million proposition to potentially get it done. And it also, when you have one county, that when you have to get a specified number out of each county, it now basically would allow one county to veto the entire state on a question.
Wow. That's amazing. Dave, I want to ask you this question. If this bill passes, what kind of campaigns will still be able to make it to the ballot and who won't?
The biggest campaign is going to be to crush this stupid idea in the courts, because anybody who has been elected to be a representative or senator who thinks that it's okay to deny somebody a vote based on some arbitrary number they just pulled out of a hat needs to rethink their position. I mean, I'm pretty stunned about the whole thing. It's just dumber than dirt.
Well, don't
That's the nicest thing I can say about it.
Don't hold back.
I'm trying to hold back, but it's
not hold back. No, do not hold back, because we had this conversation, you and I, about a month and a half ago, and I said, remember this call? I said, I'm for this bill. You remember that conversation?
Oh, right? I do.
And it was a 10-minute conversation between you and I. So to go back to that conversation and how bad this is now, what you're doing with Pike off OTA as a volunteer, and what your plans, what the group has plans, maybe their own petition initiative, how would this impact what you do according to what Jed Green just said? And it would limit the signature gathering in the counties you wish to visit.
It's totally right. I mean, it would make the initiative petition process virtually impossible for any regular Oklahoman that doesn't have a gigantic bank account to fund it, because I mean, what are we going to do next? Start taxing people at the poll, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because this is basically a giant expensive poll tax, because you're supposed to. I mean, it's going to make it impossible to have initiative petitions for anybody except the most well-funded people in the world.
Well, that's what it sounds like. Now, Wendy, we've been on the road for like 4 or 5 days out of the last couple of weeks, and that I don't tune you out. I do listen to what you have to say. So this bill bans like out-of-state funding for petition efforts. What's the danger there? And like I said, we're focusing on the grassroots campaign, but also what's the danger and what's the advantage to the other type of campaigns with money coming in? Maybe the ones that have the dollars to go out and do this.
Yeah, well, what it does essentially is the way the bill was originally written in the Senate, it talked about qualified electors being the only ones to be able to collect the signatures. Now, this is where the preventing out-of-state influence comes from with this bill. They want to prevent organizations from bringing people in from out of state and paying them to collect signatures here, which is a large part of the signature gathering process for several organizations that can afford, to do that and pay people to come in and do that. Now they've changed the language to say registered voter. I was a little concerned about that, talked about one of the lawmakers about that, and apparently our change to the Constitution, last time we voted on amending the Constitution just in November, seems to take care of that by equating a registered voter with a qualified elector. Now, I'm still not sure that would have to, go to an opinion that's higher than mine regarding that situation. My concern with the bill has to do with the fact that we are talking about the initiative petition process. Rarchar, you know that I am a constitutionalist. So whether it's the U.S. Constitution or it's the Oklahoma State Constitution, we are much better off if we as a state and as citizens just follow the Constitution instead of trying to get ways around it.
Absolutely.
The issue with this, to me, is that Article 5, Section 2 of the Constitution, and I can read it to you. I mean, it specifically says, there's Pork Chop, by the way, he's given his opinion for you now. Section 5.2. It states that the first power reserved by the people of is the initiative. So the first power reserved. I mean, that's all I need to read on the initiative petition is to say it's a power reserved to the people by the people, and the legislature should not even be involved in this, to my mind. They're trying to find ways to limit an authority they don't have. Let me take care of my dog, okay? So you go ahead and talk to someone else for the moment, and I'll take care of him. Hang on.
I want to go back to Jed. Jed, so do you think that SB1027 is a possible reaction to the recent petition efforts like Medicaid expansion and your medical reform?
Well, it's one thing that I've enjoyed is that while this has been debated on the Capitol to this point, everyone, for the first time, folks seem not to want to throw our efforts under the bus. So, but yes, there's a lot of talk. This is reaction. You know, this is reaction, and one we do hear talked about is the Medicaid expansion. And I want to share this thought for any lawmakers that are considering this. Okay, lawmakers, unlike us, don't have to gather a few 100,000 signatures. All they have to do is run a resolution and put something before the people. For example, you know, there was the concern when 802 was run that we might hit a point where there would be funding issues because the funding formula was locked into the Constitution. You know, that was a big concern, and that's what I'm pretty sure they're wrestling with up there right now. So let's keep in mind that 802 was run in a midterm, in a primary. Okay. And because of that, when it was running a low turnout election, that thing barely got across the line. And one of the big forces was there was a hot congressional Democratic primary. And so it was enough to actually help bump that across the line. I would be willing to venture that if lawmakers have an issue with that, if they would put that back on the ballot and say, okay, in real time, this is what we told you was going to happen. We may not be moving to eliminate this, but we may adjust the funding formula. I mean, come up with a proposal, put it before the people. They don't have to go through, you know, these type of efforts to, you know, we as a group, again, I went in and argued pro se before a Supreme Court referee to hold up 820 and do what we needed to do to defeat that. I mean, they threw $3 million against us to run over our effort, and we stopped them on, you know, 16 months worth of social media. So, I mean, that's my point is I believe it is reactionary, but I don't care what you're afraid of or what your concern is. You go out, you beat it on the campaign trail. The solution is not take away the rights of the people. That is never going to end well.
Absolutely. No, it never ends well because, you know, Dave, all three of you guys here have opened my eyes to the crux of the issue is that we have the right as a republic constitution to go out and petition the government. And this does cap it. And I owe that all to David in our conversation. He really opened the eyes and all through, you know, you all did. But when we have conversations on the road, Wendy, you know, people don't understand 1027 like last night in Logan County. I know that the OK2A folks, they have endorsed 1027. That's their official line that this is a good bill that will solve a lot of issues in Oklahoma. But I don't think they're actually looking at the bill like you are. Now, Dave, you know, a lot of folks on the road have told us that they didn't understand it, but then when we discussed that, what 1027 does and what it is now and what it might do with the potential problems, they came back with one question. It seemed to them that this was a solution in search of a problem. Do you agree with that? Was there an actual abuse of the current process that needed fixing? Yeah. What process of the current petition process needed to be fixed?
What are the problems that it's supposed to fix? I asked somebody that. I mean, it's supposed to, keep these horrible out-of-state people from coming in and destroying Oklahoma, because that's such a huge problem. Is it?
Right.
Prove it. I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence of it. And especially when the people that sign the initiative petitions have to be registered to vote in Oklahoma. So that doesn't hold any water. And what was the other one? Oh, it's the ultra liberal woke crowd is taking over Oklahoma using the petition process. Really? Where? I haven't seen any evidence of it. So it's easy to throw emotional hook lines out and get people behind a certain cause or whatever, but you should be able to prove what you're hollering about instead of just throwing it out there and people just nod and oh yeah, right, he's right. Is he?
Right.
Is he right?
Right. Who's here has asked and discussed this with any elected representative?
I have.
Wendy, have you? Okay, we'll start with you. So we'll start with Wendy first. Who did you speak with? How did the conversation go?
Well, I'm not sure. Sometimes I don't like to talk to representatives that I've talked to about things, but I don't think he'll mind. I talked to Jay Stiegel because I'm very respectful of his knowledge of the Constitution. And my question was a constitutional one regarding this bill. And I was listening to the debate in the Government Oversight Committee this week. And he happens to sit on that committee. And I needed to discuss something else with him. I have a resolution, quite frankly, against State Question 836, which is what we're talking about on the road right now. And oh yeah, by the way, just a correction. We were in Rogers County last night, not Logan.
Wow.
So we haven't been to Logan County yet, but I think they've invited us.
Hey, I'm
I
tired.
know, but I think, Rogers County may get a little upset if we get that wrong. But
sorry, guys. I still loved you. Thank you for dinner last night.
It was awesome. So anyway, I was talking to Jay about this, and he said that there are other places he believes in the Constitution which grant and the legislature the authority to set parameters, because the initiative petitions, all of this goes on a ballot, which is held during an election. And so he believes that the legislature has the right to set certain parameters regarding that, constitutionally. And I just kept pointing to Article 5, Section 2, that says this is the petition process is a process that is reserved to the people. And we just agreed to disagree because, we don't get disagreeable with each other at all, because that doesn't solve anything. But what we do is He gave me some things to think about, and I gave him some things to think about. And that's the way I try to approach the legislators regarding any issue I have with them, and about any piece of legislation. So I advise all of my fellow citizens when I talk to them to do the same thing. If you have an issue, call up your representative and talk to them respectfully, or somebody on the committee, and talk to them respectfully and give them something to think about. And the more people that talk to them, the more they may think about their position, and the more it reminds them that they are representatives of constituents out there. They aren't just sent up there to just go do whatever it is. And if they don't hear from their constituents, they don't know what you think. So 1027, regarding the insertion of the legislature into the petition process, is something that really does bother me. And I'm afraid that the more we go down this road, the more the legislature may get the idea that they can just, kind of bump into this stuff. Of course, one of my concerns is a lot of legislation that comes out doesn't have any teeth to it. So if you get caught bringing people in from out of state, or you're not a registered voter that's collecting signatures, let's say this does pass and it's upheld somehow as being constitutional, what's the ramifications for that? What's going to be the where's the penalty for that, so people know that up front? I'm not sure. There's just too many questions that go into this that aren't answered, and it does seem to me to be fashioned to prevent one petition potentially from passing, but what's it going to do to the Constitution in the meantime and to the people? The
Absolutely.
grassroots, we have a lot of petitions that we may need to file because our legislators are busy not listening to new legislators that have been elected, like Jim Shaw. He didn't get any of his bills heard at all. He didn't even get them heard in committee this time. That means the people of his
Right.
district have been, to a certain extent, disenfranchised this year on legislation they wanted to see happen. So what's going on there? We have a lot of problems that people would like to see resolved. And if we can't see them resolved through our legislators, the petition process is a process by which the people reserve the right to themselves to handle legislation on their own. So that's
Absolutely.
a problem,
Hey,
you
Jed.
know, when the legislature wants to interfere with that.
Right. It's always a problem when they stick their nose into things that don't need to be fixed. Jed, who did you have a conversation with and how that ends up?
I've had a variety of conversations with a variety of lawmakers. I haven't talked to Speaker Hilbert, but I did stop by his office and talk with folks there extensively. The result of that was an even worse version, his amendment. I talked to him about what was coming over from the Senate, and that's what we got in response. So I figured it'll be a dead end. I've talked to, I don't want to just chunk them all under the bus, you know, but I've talked to a number of folks. You know, I've gotten a variety of reasons. Well, I'm afraid that this is going to get run, or, you know, this is a constitutional republic and our founding fathers hated direct democracy, and this is what they would have wanted. Well, I mean, if we're going there while we're limiting voting rights, let's throw the women and the coloreds in there too, right? So,
Right.
you know, I don't, you know, I don't buy that crap. And yeah, I said it. I will say it. So, you know, the thing is I get what the concern is. There is a fundamental lack of understanding by a lot of these folks. I don't believe that any lawmaker in there has actually had to do this or understands how difficult that it really actually is. So, you know, I've had some conversations, and let's just run down the list, the list here on this of problems. Number one, this is retroactive application. Can a law be applied retroactively?
How legal is that?
No,
The other thing is that I see in the difference between the House and the Senate version, there's a severability clause. They've already admitted in this bill by adding that severability clause that they expect that this will be challenged. They expect that a number of things, the registered voter to collect signatures, that was already defeated, as well as the residency requirement for signature gatherers, that fell at the 10th Circuit. So there is precedence already against a number of these things. This has been tried in other states that have tried to do the same thing. And so what this really comes down to is that also not being able to be retroactive, 836 is out the gate, 837 is out of the gate. There's at this point, no Secretary of State reviewing a gist in a new capacity that ultimately puts them in conflict potentially with an attorney general review of the ballot title. I mean, this thing is bad, literally everything it touches. And there may be one or two things that, well, I'm not going to say to know the mind of the court, but when I look at what precedent is and I look at the obvious elimination of voting rights, I just don't think that, I mean, it's like, this may be just a complete exercise in futility, even if it is passed. And again, the one thing it is not going to do is slow down a well-funded intent operation from getting this done. And if 836 is the target, you know, if that is the target, then again, they're already out the gate. There is a challenge to it within the appropriate, you know, course. Let's talk about the ballot title. I mean, let's talk about the gist at that point. I see that's been filed. You know, there are mechanisms to do this without basically throwing a Hail Mary that the legislature can pass a law and apply it retroactively.
Right.
I mean, on its face, this is
it sounds sketchy, you know. So if they know in your conversations with the House Speaker that potentially it may go to litigation, why pursue this current course? It makes no sense, and we'll have to keep eyes on that. Now, Dave, you guys at the Pike Off OTA, you are pretty active here in Norman, pretty active in the state. What is your position? What is the organization position on this, and what have they done? I know you guys are pushing a lot of bills. You're working at the Capitol along with these two as well, but you have the numbers. So tell us what Pike Off is doing to bring attention to the people here in the county and around the state, and your conversations with the legislators yourself.
Well, I can't speak for the whole organization. I'm just a volunteer. I held no official title. I'm not on the board or anything like that. However, I do work with a lot of people doing a lot of things. And all of my conversations with the people in the legislature have been through email, because we organized 2 or 3 waves of email conversations. And you send an email off to your legislator or whoever's on a particular committee at the time, and you get back a response. I'm afraid there are already people at the Capitol that are pig-headed about, they could care less what the people of Oklahoma think. I literally believe that, because I've seen it. And a lot of the responses we got back from Bullard in particular and Hilbert were condescending and insulting. And I don't know how far being polite and respectful gets you in those situations, because they're not polite and respectful. If they disagree with you, they will literally dress you down in public if necessary. I've seen that happen too. And so it's very frustrating to see that this shouldn't be a divisive issue in Oklahoma. It's as plain as day what's going on. And, you know, words have meaning. And if there are words in a bill that you can read and see them in direct contradiction with the Constitution of the state, that's a no-brainer. Why is there even a debate over it? Well, it's because this is a philosophical debate. And some of these guys have some very strange philosophies. But I think the bottom line is, living in Norman has always been, there's always been this struggle between the left and the right in Norman, as long as I've lived here, which has been 55 years. And I've often wondered if that wasn't actually healthy, because it keeps either side from gaining control and running the damn place. Same way goes with the Capitol. We've always had this strange thing about, we elect Republican governors, but we'll have a Democrat legislature, or we'll have a Democrat governor, but we'll have a Republican legislature. Now, for the first time in history, the Republicans pretty much run the show up there. And I'm not sure if they're some of the guys are doing it in good faith. I believe most of them are, but I think there's some real problems with leadership up there. And so for anybody to come along and say that a bill that takes away your right to vote is okay, you've got to question there's something wrong with that person. What is it? So I think that's the part that just stuns people the most, is that they see that kind of arrogance coming out of their representatives and they just back off. They're just like, well, the heck with this. I'm not even going to participate anymore. If that's the way things are, I give up. And that's tough.
Right.
And it's tough to blame people for giving up, but, I'm too pig-headed, I guess, to give up, because I still have a sense of right and wrong. And what they're trying to do is wrong.
There you go. Look, there's a lot of discussion. We can talk about this for hours, but let me ask you a question: that if lawmakers were serious about improving the process without suppressing it, what kind of reforms would you support other than not messing with it?
Yeah, where's the stuff that really needs to be improved? What is it? And obviously, it's preventing the people that oppose you from voting.
Right. So same question to you, Wendy. So if our lawmakers were serious about improving our process without suppressing it, there's no issue in the current process. But what reforms would you have that you would support?
What reforms to the
If
petition
any.
process?
If any.
I think that for amending the Constitution, it needs to be more than a 50.1% yes vote, on that. I think we need to up that a little bit for amending the Constitution. As far as passing legislation through the petition process, it's probably, I don't think that really needs to be amended. What I do think is that people, when they submit their petitions, probably need to think a little bit more about ramifications and write things in that process rather than leaving it to the legislature to then write regulations to something they don't understand well in the first place. There needs to be a little bit more of that. But as far as real other reforms, I mean, you're talking to somebody, Rarchar, that's been trying to get meaningful election integrity legislation passed, even out of committee for the past almost 4 years now, with little to no success. So the petition initiative process is very important to people who have something that really needs to be done that the legislature won't address. And the Constitution itself says that is a right that is reserved by the people, which means hands off, everybody else. If we need to reform the petition process, we're going to have to get a petition started to reform the petition process and amend the Constitution as the people and get it done. The legislature really, I'm worried that they have their hands on this in the manner that they do. It's very restrictive, and it is worrisome to me.
It is. Hey, Jed, and I don't know if you told me or someone pointed this out to me last week that Hilbert actually used the word direct democracy. Is that true? That he brought in the phrase, the idea of direct democracy? And do you think this is part of a larger national trend around the nation that's been trying to infiltrate here in Oklahoma? So did he actually say direct democracy when it came to 1027? And do you think there's a national trend trying to change how things are done around the nation, state by state?
There's definitely an effort to further restrict the petition process state by state, definitely in that. And I just do throw in Representative Olson, one of our folks, emailed in, and the response they got was, well, if you don't like it, move. So,
right.
These are the same folks that say that they want, right. We want participation in the election, but yeah. So anyway, no, there's
hold on a second. Your response to that should say that if we want to change the laws, we just voted new legislators. All right. That seems outrageous what he told you.
Right? Well, no, and I'll tell you, and this is what I'm being open with about lawmakers this coming week, is that as far as our organization is concerned, when we're making our legislative scorecards for 2026, this is the double F rank. That stands for is freedom fail. That's what's going to be on their report card on this, because it fundamentally attacks the right of the people. And for when you run into folks that have that attitude and that condescending attitude, we just immediately say, okay, well, the door is shut. And this is something lawmakers also ought to consider. When you take away this safety valve that we have, to get something done, guess what? All the focus is now on you. We see what this looks like in Texas. You want to make these elections that much more high stakes, you probably will get a lot more involvement, because this means, without us knowing that we can go in and move things when all else has failed with lawmakers, this means that we will be in there, and every comma will be a hill to die on in bills moving forward. This is fundamental here. And so, this is a double F ranking. There will not be recovery from this. And lawmakers that do that, they've made it clear. They just said, come see me in the primary. So we'll see about doing
that
that.
is such arrogance.
No need to sit here and have them push this any further. Now the ones that want to talk,
and you
to
wonder
adults,
why people,
when we talk about,
yeah,
and here's the thing, is that on the concept that we ought to make this a little bit harder to get it in the Constitution heard. At the same time, right now, for us to get what we need to get done, it's 30,000 man-hour project in 90 days to make that happen. That is how hard it is right now. So if we're going to raise that bar even more, then, from our side of the track over here, we would say we would like to see a 180-day window to gather signatures, not 90.
good point.
If we're going to raise that bar up to 20%, 25%, if you once you've had to do this, you have a whole new respect for just how hard it is. And, it's a great point. There are a number of different issues that may have to, be it election reform, be it, things like manure, be it what's going on with Pike Authority. There are things that the legislature is never ever going to touch. And if you give away this power, we're going to be looking like Texas, where they think they're kings.
Absolutely. We all have to fight. Hey, last question. So I'll start with Dave. What advice would you give someone who wants to fight this, either at the Capitol or through public awareness?
Find somebody to work with. Find a group like to work with, like Pike Off OTA, or whatever other groups are out there organized to take care of business, because this is serious stuff. I mean, this changes the way Oklahoma operates as a state, and the guys at the Capitol need to stop being afraid of their constituencies and embrace them and figure out what really needs to be done, because this ain't it.
And respect the constituents. Now you know why when you talk around, the discussions we've had in the last couple of weeks around the state is that most people don't believe their votes matter in November. So why vote? And this is one of the reasons they don't participate or don't want to participate, is because of conversations like this, where we hear our elected officials so flippant at our request to honor and listen to what we have to say. Jed, same question to you. If you wanted to talk to someone, how would you advise them to fight this?
What we're encouraging all our folks to do is to, right now it appears that it's the House GOP, that the ball is in their court. They're the supermajority. We already know where the Democrats are at on this. So, at this point, it's that's the group that we're asking everyone to reach out to, and, email, call, go up there, troll around, call your friends, call your family, and have them start calling in, and make sure that they understand that if, when you get a flippant response, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to argue with you. We'll see you next year.
Right.
That's it. I mean, that's what this is about. If you believe that you should take away the power of the people, we believe, and are flippant and disrespectful, then okay, that's fine. We don't argue with crazy people. We get to work. That's what we're encouraging people to do. It's that serious.
Wendy, same question to you. What advice would you have to anybody who's wanting to fight this, if they want to fight this?
Well, I give them the advice that I've been giving them regarding the elections, right? And I would just like to say that I had a very good conversation with Representative Stiegel. I don't think he would ever say to me what, unfortunately, you had said to you. That's, and I always tell people, be respectful. And the issue is you get a large group of people to go in, not just yourself. It's much more difficult to be flippant and dismissive to a large group of people than it is one individual person. So if you gather yourself and a whole bunch of your best friends and go up to the Capitol and spend a day knocking on doors and talking to people, that is going to get you a lot further. I have heard from multiple representatives, if they get 10 phone calls regarding an issue into their office, that's a big deal. Okay, so make the calls, write the letters, walk up there, and make appointments, or just walk in the door and say, I'd like to talk to Representative so-and-so. And if they're in their office, they usually will talk to you. I mean, they don't shut people out. So it's a matter of catching them when they're in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Oklahoma's initial petition process has always been a tool for the people, and it's a pressure valve when the legislature refuses to listen. But it's not perfect, but it's perfect for us, and it's ours. And when we start rewriting the rules of engagement, especially the rules that let regular folks bring change directly to the ballot, the politicians ought to tread carefully. Thanks for listening. This conversation is challenging. It challenged me. I can say for sure it challenged me, because I was against and I was for it until the three of you had this conversation tonight. But I hope this opens the eyes of all the voters to get out. This is our process. This is our petition. This is how we'd like to do business. And I know they're getting phone calls from the constituents that don't agree with this. And I encourage everyone who's listening to this, either tonight or the replay tomorrow, to participate. Here in Norman, we have the Pike guys, we have the ORED guys, the GOP, the Democrat Party. This is a bad bill, which will hurt us in the long run. We have folks like Jed Green and ORCA. You can connect with them. And Wendy Dial of Restore Liberty. Any one of us or any one of your groups, I believe it is accurate that if you go in mass, they can't ignore you. And that's the power of the people. I want to thank you guys for watching tonight. I want to thank my guests. Dave Moore, it's always nice to have you on board. We got to do this more often. Jed, you're always on target. And Wendy Dial, we're going to have more conversations on the road, and I swear I will stay awake. So I want to thank you guys for showing up tonight. And good night, and let's wait for this to clear.